The night my husband announced our divorce, he did not do it in private. He waited until 200 guests had lifted their champagne glasses at the 20th anniversary gala of Carter Restoration Group, the company I had built beside him. Then he stepped onto the stage, raised a microphone, and thanked everyone who had helped him turn a small home repair business into one of the largest restoration companies in North Carolina. He thanked his mother. He thanked our daughter. He thanked our investors. Then he thanked a 32-year-old executive named Sienna Valfor, giving him the courage to begin a new chapter. People laughed softly because they thought it was a business joke. It was not. My husband looked directly at me and announced that I had agreed to leave both the marriage and the company. I had agreed to nothing. Before I could reach the stage, he leaned close enough for only me to hear him. "Do not make a scene, Evelyn," he whispered. "By morning, you will have no house, no money, and no proof you were ever part of this." He was wrong about one thing. The proof was hidden beneath the floor of the first house we had ever restored. My name is Evelyn Carter. I was 48 years old that night, and until the moment my husband humiliated me in front of our employees, clients, friends, and family. I believed I understood the life I had lived. I believed my marriage had grown cold because Mark and I worked too much. I believed I had stepped away from daily operations because he was better at public speaking, and I was better behind the scenes. I believed the company belonged to both of us, even though most people saw only his face on television commercials. I believed our daughter, Lily, had become distant because young adults sometimes pull away from their parents. Most of all, I believed that 26 years of marriage still meant something. The expression on Mark's face told me it meant nothing to him. He returned to the stage while I stood frozen beside a table covered with white roses. Sienna joined him. She wore a silver dress and a calm smile. Mark placed one hand against the small of her back in a way no married man should touch another woman. A screen behind them displayed a new company logo. Cartarval Rastor Ion. My last name was still there, but I was not. The applause began slowly. Most people did not understand what they were seeing. A few executives did. They kept their eyes away from me. Then my mother-in-law, Margaret, approached me with a glass of champagne. She had always known how to smile without warmth. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself," she said. "Mark has been planning this for months." I looked at her. "You knew." She took a small sip. "A man like my son needs a wife who keeps up." For years, I had paid the mortgage on her lake house. I had covered her medical insurance. I had even transferred money into her account each month, because Mark said his mother deserved comfort after raising him alone. Now she looked at me as if I were an employee whose contract had expired. I wanted to throw the champagne in her face. Instead, I asked one question. "Where is Lily?" Margaret nodded toward the terrace. My daughter stood outside beneath strings of golden lights. She was 24, tall and dark, haired like me, but her posture was Mark's. Straight shoulders, controlled expression, no sign of panic. I hurried toward her. "Lily, did you know about this?" As she looked past me toward her father. "He said you were leaving him," she answered. "I never said that. He showed me the messages." "What messages?" Her eyes filled with anger. "The ones where you said you were tired of being a wife and mother. The ones where you said the company had stolen your life." My breath caught. I had written no such messages. "Your father lied to you." Lily's face hardened. "He said you would say that." She walked away before I could stop her. That hurt more than the announcement. More than Sienna's hand on my husband's arm. More than Margaret's smile. Mark had not merely planned to remove me from the company. He had rewritten me inside my own daughter's mind. I returned to the ballroom. But 2 security guards were waiting near the doors. They were men I had hired. One of them looked ashamed as he handed me my coat and purse. "Mrs. Carter, Carter asked us to escort you out. This is my company." He lowered his eyes. "I am sorry." Everyone watched as I walked through the ballroom alone. I heard the music start again, before the doors closed behind me. I stood beneath the hotel entrance, while rain blew across the pavement and guests' cars rolled past me one after another. I had helped build a company worth more than $80 million, yet I could not pay for a ride home. That was when an old pickup truck stopped at the curb. The driver was a man named Samuel Brooks. He had worked for us since the first year of the company. He was 67 now, with gray hair, rough hands, and the same quiet eyes I remembered from the day Mark and I hired him. Samuel leaned across the seat and pushed open the passenger door. "Get in." "Miss Evelyn." I climbed inside. For the first 5 minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Samuel said, "Your husband fired me this afternoon." I turned toward him. "Why?" He said I was too loyal to the past. The way he said, it made me look at him carefully. "What does that mean?" Samuel kept his eyes on the road. "It means your father was right about him." My father had been dead for 9 years. Samuel drove past the highway exit that led to my home. I said, "You cannot go there. That is my house. Not tonight." He handed me his phone. A security camera image showed movers carrying boxes through my front door. Another image showed Margaret supervising them. My clothes, books, and personal belongings were being loaded into a rented storage truck, while the gala was still happening. Mark had planned to erase me before midnight. "Where are we going?" I asked. Samuel looked toward the dark road ahead. "To the beginning." 40 minutes later, we reached a small town outside Charlotte. Samuel turned onto a narrow street lined with old oak trees and stopped in front of a 2-story Victorian house. The paint was faded. The porch leaned slightly to one side. Several windows were covered with boards. I knew the house immediately. It was the first property Mark and I had restored together. 22 years earlier. My father had loaned us the money to buy it. I drew the renovation plans at our kitchen table, while Mark knocked on doors looking for clients. Samuel repaired the roof. I stripped wallpaper, refinished floors, and slept on a mattress in the dining room, because we could not afford rent anywhere else. We sold the house for enough profit to start Carter Restoration Group. At least, I thought we had sold it. "Why are we here?" I asked. Samuel reached into the glove compartment and removed a brass key. "Your father bought the house back through a trust before he died." I stared at him. "Why would he do that?" He said, "Every person needs one place that cannot be taken from them." The front door opened with the key. Inside, the house smelled of dust and old wood. Samuel used a flashlight as we crossed the empty living room. The floors creaked beneath us. He led me to the small library at the back of the house. My father had built the shelves himself. I remembered him kneeling on the floor, measuring each board, while Mark complained that the work was taking too long. Samuel moved a bookcase away from the wall. Beneath it was one floorboard with a tiny brass circle near the edge. He inserted the key and lifted the board. A narrow metal box rested inside the space below. My hands shook as I opened it. The first thing I saw was an envelope with my name, written in my father's handwriting. "Evelyn, open this only when Mark leaves you with nothing." For several seconds, I could not breathe. Samuel stepped out of the room and gave me privacy. Inside the envelope was a letter. My father wrote that he hoped I would never read it. He said he had watched Mark become more controlling as the company grew. He had seen documents disappear from my office. He had seen Mark pressure me to sign papers while I was exhausted or distracted. He had tried to warn me, but I had mistaken his concern for dislike. Then I reached the final paragraph. You did not build half of that company, Evelyn. You built the foundation of all of it. That is why the original ownership agreement places 51% in the Eleanor Reed Family Trust, with you as the sole beneficiary. Mark knows this. If he ever claims otherwise, he is lying. Under the letter were the original incorporation documents. My name appeared on every page. The trust owned 51%. Mark owned 49%. There was also a notarized agreement stating that no transfer of my shares was valid without my physical presence, 2 independent witnesses, and written confirmation from the trust attorney. I remembered the day we signed it. I had been 30 years old, pregnant with Lily, and too happy to imagine that I might one day need protection from my husband. Beneath the documents was a small digital recorder and another note. Ask Samuel about Blue Ridge Materials. I called him back into the room. What is Blue Ridge Materials? Samuel closed the door before answering. A company that does not exist. He explained that for 6 years, Carter Restoration Group had paid millions of dollars to Blue Ridge Materials for lumber, stone, and roofing supplies. Samuel supervised many of the construction sites. The materials listed on the invoices had never arrived. At first, he assumed it was a bookkeeping mistake. Then he discovered that the vendor address led to a mailbox inside a shipping store. The company's registered manager was an elderly man named Walter Vale, Sienna's father. I felt the room tilt around me. So Sienna and Mark have been stealing from the company. I believe so, Samuel said. Your father suspected Mark was moving money before he died. He asked me to keep copies of anything unusual. I looked at the company papers again. At the gala, Mark had promised that by morning I would have no proof I had ever been part of Carter Restoration Group. But I had more than proof. I had control. I wanted to call him immediately. I wanted to hear the fear in his voice when I told him what I had found. Samuel stopped me. Do not warn him. He was right. For 26 years, Mark had known exactly how I reacted. He expected tears, anger pleading, and desperate phone calls. He had built his plan around the woman he believed I still was. So I did the one thing he did not expect. I disappeared. The next morning, Mark filed for divorce. His petition accused me of abandoning the marriage, stealing company money, and becoming emotionally unstable. Attached were messages supposedly written by me. They copied my phrases and mentioned private family details, but one was dated the night my father died, when I had been surrounded by relatives in his hospital room. That false date gave us the first crack in Mark's story. Samuel contacted my father's former trust attorney, Diane Mercer. She showed me 3 warning letters she had mailed years earlier, after Mark tried to transfer my shares. Every letter had been received and signed for by Margaret. My mother-in-law had hidden them. Diane introduced me to forensic accountant Rosa Alvarez. Within days, Rosa found 7 false vendors that had received more than $11 million. The money passed through several accounts before reaching North Star Residential Partners, the firm preparing to buy our company. Rosa explained the plan. Mark was draining the company, hiding the debt, and arranging a sale at an inflated value. When the losses surfaced, employees would lose retirement money, investors would be ruined, and the fraudulent approvals would point to me. He did not merely want my house and company. He wanted to leave me holding the crime. For the next 3 weeks, I lived quietly in the old Victorian house. To the public, I looked defeated. Mark gave interviews saying the divorce was painful but necessary. He described himself as a husband trying to protect his company from a wife who had become unpredictable. Sienna appeared beside him in business photographs. Margaret posted pictures from my home as though she already owned it. The hardest part was Lily. I called her every day at first. She never answered. Then I stopped calling because Diane warned me that Mark might claim I was harassing her. Instead, I wrote one short message. I love you. I did not abandon you. When you are ready to see the truth, I will be here. The message showed as delivered but unread. During those weeks, Rosa followed the money while I studied my own company from the outside. I remembered every major project, every supplier, every client. I compared those memories with the invoices Samuel had saved. The fake charges were hidden inside real disasters. After hurricanes, fires, and floods, clients expected costs to rise. Mark had used chaos as cover. Whenever families were desperate to rebuild their homes, he added materials that did not exist and moved the extra money through false vendors. That discovery changed my anger. At first, I wanted revenge because he had betrayed me. Then I saw photographs of families standing beside burned houses and flooded bedrooms. I saw elderly clients who had trusted our name. I saw employees whose retirement funds Mark had used to keep cash moving. This was no longer only about my marriage. It was about every person he believed was too small to fight back. Rosa eventually found a weakness in Mark's system. Each false vendor invoice had been approved through a digital account assigned to me. Mark had used my identity, but the approvals came from an office computer on the executive floor. Building records showed that I had not entered that floor on many of the dates. Someone else had used my access. We needed the original server logs before Mark deleted them. The company's annual insurance review gave me a legal reason to return. I was still the registered safety officer, and the insurer required my signature. Mark called and offered me $2 million and Margaret's heavily mortgaged lake cottage if I signed his settlement. When I refused, he threatened to turn Lily against me completely. I will inspect the records on Monday, I told him. You always were stubborn, he said. No, I was loyal. You confused the two because loyalty was easier for you to use. On Monday morning, I entered Carter Restoration Group for the first time since the gala. Employees watched silently as Sienna met me at the elevator and announced that she would supervise my inspection. The building had once been an abandoned textile warehouse. I had fought to preserve its brick walls and tall windows when Mark wanted to tear it down. Now a giant photograph of him hung in the lobby. My photograph had been removed. Employees watched me cross the floor. Some looked frightened. Some looked guilty. A few gave me small nods. Sienna met me at the elevator. She wore a navy suit and carried a tablet. Mr. Carter asked me to supervise your visit, she said. I looked at the woman I believed had helped steal my husband, my company, and my identity. Then you should try to keep up. For 6 hours, I inspected safety reports, equipment records, and insurance files. Sienna remained within a few feet of me. I asked ordinary questions and pretended not to notice the server room at the end of the hallway. I finished the inspection at 5:15. As Sienna walked me toward the elevator, she dropped her tablet. The screen cracked against the floor. When she bent to pick it up, a folded piece of paper slid beneath my shoe. She did not look at it. She only said, "You should leave through the west stairwell. The main elevator is being serviced." The elevator was not being serviced. I placed the paper inside my coat and followed her instruction. In the west stairwell, I opened it. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. St. Ang's parking garage. Come alone if you want the server logs. I should have shown the note to Diane. I should have told Samuel. Instead, I went alone. St. Agnes Hospital had closed 2 years earlier. Its parking garage was mostly empty, and half the lights no longer worked. At 7, I stood beside a concrete pillar with my phone recording inside my coat. Sienna arrived 5 minutes later. She was not alone. A man stepped from the passenger side of her car. He was in his early 60s and walked with a cane. I recognized him from the vendor registration photograph. Walter Vale, Sienna's father. I backed away. If this is a trap, you chose the wrong woman. Sienna held both hands where I could see them. My father did not steal from your company, she said. Mark stole his name. Walter explained that Blue Ridge Materials had once been a real family business. 12 years earlier, a fire destroyed its warehouse. Carter Restoration Group handled the insurance repairs. Mark offered to buy the damaged company, but Walter refused. A month later, the bank called his loans. His business collapsed. He suffered a stroke soon afterward. Sienna had spent years trying to understand what happened. When she joined Carter Restoration Group, she discovered that Mark had secretly registered a new version of Blue Ridge Materials using Walter's old business information. He used Walter's identity to create accounts and false invoices. Why did you become involved with him? I asked. Sienna's expression tightened. Because I needed him to trust me. The gala did not look like an investigation. I know. You let him put his hands on you. I let him believe what he wanted to believe. The answer did not remove my anger, but it changed its direction. Sienna said she had copied server logs, emails, and recordings. Mark believed she was helping him complete the sale to North Star. In reality, she had been gathering evidence for a federal financial crimes investigator. Then why come to me? I ask. Because the investigator says the case needs someone inside North Star. Mark is meeting them at the Founders Banquet next month. He plans to sign the final sale agreement there. The Founders Banquet was our company's largest annual event. Hundreds of employees, investors, reporters, and clients would attend. Mark loved public victories. He had humiliated me on a stage. Now he planned to steal the company on another one. Sienna handed me a small encrypted drive. The server logs are here. But there is something else you need to know. She showed me an email between Mark and Margaret. Margaret had not merely intercepted Diane's letters. She had helped Mark create the false messages shown to Lily. For years, Margaret had saved copies of my emails and text messages. She gave Mark enough samples to copy my writing style. They used an online number to send the fake messages to his phone, then changed the contact name so it appeared they came from me. A second email made my stomach turn. Mark planned to convince Lily that I had stolen from the company. He intended to ask her to testify against me during the divorce. My own daughter was his final shield. Before we left, Walter touched my arm. Your husband destroys people by making them ashamed, he said. Do not carry his shame for him. That night, I listened to the recordings. Mark's voice filled the empty library of the old house. He bragged about forging my approvals. He laughed about employees who would lose retirement money. He told North Star's representative that I was the perfect fall woman, because the public already believed emotional women made reckless decisions. Then I heard him speak about Lily. If she cries in court, the jury will believe anything, he said. I stopped the recording. For the first time since the gala, I cried, not because I wanted him back, not because he had chosen another woman. I cried because I finally understood that the man I loved had studied every person around him, only to learn where to place the knife. The next morning, I asked Diane to arrange a meeting with Lily. Lily refused twice. On the third attempt, Diane told her the meeting concerned the family trust and required her presence as a future beneficiary. She arrived at Diane's office angry and guarded. Mark's driver waited outside. Lily sat across from me but would not remove her coat. "You have 10 minutes," she said. I placed my phone on the table. "I am not asking you to choose between your parents. I am asking you to listen." I played the recording of Mark discussing her testimony. At first, Lily showed no reaction. Then her face slowly lost color. "He was talking about someone else," she whispered. I played the next section, where Mark used her name. Lily stood so quickly that her chair struck the wall. "No." I showed her the fake message records. Diane explained how the numbers had been created. Then I gave Lily photographs from the hospital room on the night of my father's death. The timestamps proved I could not have sent one of the messages. She stared at the evidence for a long time. Finally, she looked at me. "Why did he do this?" "Because he needed you to doubt me before I could tell you the truth." Her eyes filled with tears. "I said terrible things about you." "You believed your father. I should have asked you." "Yes?" I said gently. "You should have." I did not tell her it was fine, because it was not. Love does not require us to pretend pain never happened. But I reached across the table and took her hand. "You can ask me now." She began with one question and then another. We talked for almost 3 hours. Lily told me Mark had spent years describing me as fragile, resentful, and uninterested in family life. Whenever I missed dinner because of a project, he said I cared more about buildings than people. Whenever I challenged him at work, he told Lily I was having an episode. He had slowly turned my strength into evidence against me. Before Lily left, she asked what I planned to do. "I am going to stop the sale." "Will Dad go to prison?" "I do not know." "Do you want him to?" I considered lying to protect her. Then I remembered Walter's warning about shame. "Yes," I said. "If the evidence proves he committed these crimes, I want him held responsible." Lily nodded slowly. "I think I do too." Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation moved quickly. Federal agents verified the server logs. Bank records connected Northstar to the false vendors. The supposed buyer was not a traditional investment firm at all. It was a network of shell companies controlled by Mark and 2 partners. Their plan was simple and cruel. They would use investor money to purchase Carter Restoration Group at an inflated price. Mark would receive millions from the sale. Then the hidden debt would surface. The company would collapse, and its employee pension fund would cover part of the losses. I would be blamed for approving the fraudulent invoices. On the morning of the banquet, Mark asked a judge to declare me mentally unfit and presented the forged share transfer papers. Diane produced the original trust agreement, and Rosa proved that his signatures had been copied from an old mortgage. The judge denied his request and temporarily froze the sale. Outside the courthouse, Mark told me that truth mattered only when people believed it. Then he saw Lily waiting beside Samuel. He opened his arms to her. "Your mother is manipulating you." Lily stopped several feet away. "No, you already did that." She walked toward me instead. For the first time, Mark looked truly afraid. The banquet took place that evening in the same hotel where Mark had announced our divorce. He refused to cancel it. The court order had frozen the sale, but he believed he could pressure the board and investors into supporting him. He told reporters that the ownership dispute was a temporary misunderstanding caused by a bitter divorce. I arrived wearing the same black dress I had worn on the night he humiliated me. Not because I lacked another dress, because I wanted him to remember the woman he had thrown out. This time, I did not enter alone. Lily walked beside me. Samuel was on my other side. Diane, Rosa, Walter, and several federal investigators entered through a separate door. The ballroom became quiet. Mark stood on the stage beneath the new Cartarvel Residartio logo. Sienna stood near him in a silver dress, almost identical to the one she had worn before. For a moment, Mark looked relieved when he saw her. He still believed she belonged to him. He began his speech. He spoke about courage, leadership, and protecting the company from personal conflict. Then, he invited Sienna to announce the final partnership with North Star. She approached the microphone. Instead of reading the prepared statement, she looked directly at me. "Carter Restoration Group is not being sold tonight," she said. The room erupted in whispers. Mark reached for the microphone, but Sienna stepped away. A large screen behind them changed. The new logo disappeared. In its place appeared the original incorporation document. My name was highlighted beside the 51% ownership share. I walked toward the stage. Mark tried to block me. 2 board members stepped between us. For years, they had followed him because they believed he controlled the company. Now they understood that he did not. I took the microphone. "My husband told many of you that I agreed to leave this company," I said. "I did not. He told investors that he owned it. He does not. He told my daughter that I abandoned my family. I did not. And he told federal regulators that I approved millions of dollars in fraudulent payments. I looked at him. I did not." The screen displayed invoices, server records, and bank transfers. Rosa had organized the evidence in a way anyone could understand. $11 million had moved through false vendors. Employee pension money had been placed at risk. North Star's shell companies led back to Mark and his partners. Then Sienna played one of the recordings. Mark's voice filled the ballroom. He laughed about using me as the fall woman. No one moved. When the recording ended, Mark grabbed the microphone. "She planned this," he shouted, pointing at Sienna. "She seduced me. She created those accounts. Evelyn is working with her because they both want my money." Sienna's face did not change. She displayed an email written by Mark 3 years before she joined the company. It contained instructions for creating the first false vendor. His accusation died in the air. Margaret pushed through the crowd and climbed the stage steps. "This is a family matter," she said. "It should not be happening in public." I almost smiled. She had enjoyed my public humiliation when she believed I was powerless. Now she wanted privacy. I faced the board members. As the legal owner of 51% of Carter Restoration Group, I call an emergency shareholder vote to remove Mark Carter as Chief Executive Officer. Diane confirmed my authority. The vote took less than 3 minutes. Mark voted for himself. Everyone else voted to remove him. He stood beneath the lights, breathing hard. While the company he had stolen rejected him, in front of the same people who once applauded. Then the investigators approached. One agent asked Mark to place his hands behind his back. He looked at me as the handcuffs closed. "This is revenge," he said. "No," I answered. "Revenge would be destroying what you love. This is justice. I am saving what you tried to destroy." Margaret began shouting that I was cruel. She demanded that Lily defend her father. Lily stepped onto the stage. Her voice shook, but she did not look away. "My mother did not break this family," she said. "The lies did." Mark was led out through the ballroom doors. No music started after he left. No one lifted a glass. The room remained silent until Samuel began to clap. One employee joined him. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was standing. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. Justice does not return the years stolen by a lie. It does not restore a daughter's trust in a single night. It does not turn a false marriage into a real one. But it creates space where healing can begin. The criminal case lasted 14 months. Mark pleaded not guilty until Sienna's recordings, Rose's financial analysis, and the server records made denial impossible. He eventually accepted a plea agreement covering wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy, and theft from an employee benefit plan. 2 North Star partners were also convicted. Mark was sentenced to federal prison. Margaret was not charged with the financial crimes, but her role in the forged messages and intercepted legal documents became part of the civil case. The judge ordered her to repay money she had received through accounts funded by the fraud. She called me the day before she had to leave my house. Yes, my house. The mansion had been purchased through the Eleanor Reed Family Trust. Mark had told me it was placed in his name for tax reasons. It never was. Margaret asked for more time. I gave her 72 hours instead of 24. That was not forgiveness. It was simply proof that I would not become her. Then I made a decision that shocked everyone. I sold the mansion. I could not walk through those rooms without hearing lies. I did not want the staircase, the marble kitchen, or the view of the lake. A beautiful prison is still a prison. With part of the money, I repaid employees whose retirement accounts had been damaged. Insurance and recovered assets covered most of the losses, but I wanted every worker to know the company would not abandon them. With the rest, I bought an empty apartment building near downtown Charlotte. Carter Restoration Group renovated it without profit. We turned it into temporary housing for women and families escaping financial abuse. The building included legal offices, child care, counseling rooms, and a job training workshop. I named it Eleanor House after my mother. Sienna became director of financial compliance at the company. Some people questioned why I trusted her. The truth was that trust did not return easily for either of us. We built it through clear rules, open records, and time. Lily and I began therapy together. Some sessions were gentle. Others were painful. She had to accept that she had believed lies about me. I had to accept that I had hidden too much of myself behind work and silence. Mark had manipulated the distance between us, but he had not created every inch of it. Healing required truth from both of us. One evening, almost 2 years after the gala, Lily met me at the old Victorian house. I had decided to restore it again. The porch was straight. The windows were open. Fresh paint covered the walls, but I had kept the original library floor. Lily sat beside me near the loose board, where my father's box had been hidden. She held his letter in her hands. "Grandpa knew," she said. "He suspected. Do you wish you had listened to him? Every day." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you wish you had never married Dad?" That question had lived inside me for a long time. I looked at my daughter. "No," I said. "I wish I had seen him clearly. I wish I had protected myself sooner. But I will never wish away the life that gave me you." Lily leaned her head against my shoulder. We sat there as evening light moved across the shelves my father had built. The company survived. More than that, it changed. We placed employee representatives on the board. Every major payment required independent review. Our advertisements no longer used one person's face. They showed carpenters, designers, roofers, electricians, accountants, and families returning to restored homes. I became chief executive officer, but I refused to hang a giant portrait of myself in the lobby. Instead, I placed a framed copy of our first-hand, drawn renovation plan beside a photograph of the original team. In the picture, I was 30 years old, covered in dust, holding a hammer and laughing at something outside the frame. For years, I had forgotten that woman. Mark had not created her strength. He had only benefited from it. On the 3rd anniversary of the night, he announced our divorce. Carter Restoration Group held another banquet in the same ballroom. I considered changing the location, but I decided some rooms should not belong forever to the worst thing that happened inside them. The white roses were gone. In their place were small wooden houses made by trainees at Eleanor House. Lily introduced me. She did not call me a victim. She called me a builder. When I stepped onto the stage, I looked toward the doors through which security had once escorted me. Then I looked at the employees, clients, and families who had stayed. I told them that buildings fail when damage is hidden behind fresh paint. So do companies. So do families. Restoration begins only when we stop pretending the cracks are not there. After the speech, I returned to the old Victorian house alone. The renovation was complete. The library glowed in the soft light. My father's metal box rested on the desk, no longer hidden. Inside it, beneath the ownership papers and his letter, I placed one final document. It was the court order confirming that every fraudulent transfer had been canceled and every share returned to the trust. At the bottom of the page, under the company's legal name, was my signature, Evelyn Carter. For years, Mark had introduced me as his wife, his assistant, his support, or the woman who preferred to remain behind the scenes. He had taken my work and placed his name over it. He had taken my silence and called it weakness. He had taken my love and treated it as permission. But he never understood the first rule of restoration. What is buried is not always gone. Sometimes it is the strongest part of the foundation. He tried to erase my name from everything I built. In the end, my name was the only one left standing.